The Clan Wars T1 UU format is the best thing that's ever happened to the Pokemon Planet competitive scene. Change my mind. What is going on, you guys? It's your boy. I'm one for Orange, aka I'm one for Arige, aka I'm one for Tierless. Back at it again with another competitive analysis video on the Pokemon Planet meta. And in today's video, I will be making my own tier list on the Pokemon Planet T1 UU meta, which has recently come out and is also one of my most requested topics. Whether it's a friend asking me to help them build a team, or someone in the comments asking what are the threats in the T1 meta, or how to shape my team to deal with this threat. Knowing about the T1 scene and getting assistance in team building is definitely a more requested topic that I get, and we're going to address that today in a very fun fashion. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to leave a like, comment, or subscribe to be notified when I upload next. And if you're a regular viewer, you know that these videos are very podcast-like in nature. I don't do a whole lot of fancy editing, I sit here and talk, so if you'd like to go on with your day, go for your morning walk, your jog, have your coffee, do so. I'm not offended, just take in what you can, leave the audio running in the background, and I hope you learn a thing or two today about T1. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So this video is the love child of my last video. And if you missed the last video, was my 300 Turns podcast with Smooge, where we made a tier list of the meta as a whole, considering the BQ meta, as well as the set level tournament. So if you were going to the PvP building or hopped in a random BQ game, what are the threats you expect to see and how powerful are they? What are my options to deal with them? Maybe you don't know everything about the Pokemon you're fighting against. Well, that was a very informative video for that, but we did not cover other metagames such as Little Cup, Monotype, or T1. And today I will be taking on T1. And I have a few disclaimers. First off, this is my opinion. I've been working on this for probably 4 months, ever since the tier was announced. And even though this tier list is my own, it is based on the opinions of multiple competitive players I've talked to, all their different experiences merged together to form this final tier list. So even though the tier list is going to be mine, and even the people that I've shown this to may not agree with 100% of it, this is my tier list. These are my thoughts. This is not gospel or Bible. The tier is still developing and there is still much to learn. The objective of this video is to supply a visual aid to the community so they can look at this tier list and reference it as a starting point. And you can help form your team around seeing what is available in the tier and what are the threats at the top of the tier you absolutely need to prep for. These thoughts are valid as of September 6th, 2021, and they are subject to change. I believe this is the first attempt on YouTube or on the forums to make a tier list, so I do expect some of this to be controversial. But let me tell you, if there's a Pokemon that is not on this tier list and you believe it's viable, by all means, do not listen to me. Go out, get an MVP with that Pokemon, and comment on this video telling me why I'm wrong. I encourage it. But I do want to supply some kind of visual aid to those that are needing assistance team building. And if you're unfamiliar with the tier list as a whole, I have this set up, colorized in beautiful fashion. We'll be starting off with the bright, vibrant red S tier, which are essentially the most restrictive Pokemon on the metagame. Ones that you absolutely need to prep for, in my opinion, or your team will simply fall over. A+ tier is still very powerful, but not quite as restrictive. And we cascade down and down and down, all the way down to F tier. And I will only be showing the Pokemon that I feel are viable, and not every Pokemon in the T1 tier, as including NFEs, that would be well over 400 Pokemon, and we do not have time for that. So this is my opinion, and I'm going to show what I believe are the strongest ones. If you see it on this list, that definitely means something, because it made the cut over the hundreds of Pokemon that did not appear on this list. I will be leaving a link in the description to the T1 ban list as well, We won't be referencing it at all from this point forward, but just know that in T1, most of the strong Pokemon you see in T2 are banned. A few very, very big examples being Weavile, Keldeo, Gyarados, Azumarill, Dragonite, and then as well as abilities like Drizzle and Drought completely banned from the tier. And I will also be referencing the usage stats as well as win rate stats for some of the examples, but I do want to say that these are a little more suspect to base off solely to make a tier list like this. For example, from the win rate here, if I were to put stuff based on win rate in the top tiers, we would have Sigilyph being probably S tier, with Garbodor slightly below. So even though I'll be referencing usage and win rate stats for some of the examples, they should not be taken as face value to just simply throw a Pokemon with a high win rate into the tier. There are multiple factors we'll be going over and talking about. But wow, that was a long disclaimer about a bunch of stuff that only nerds are going to care about, including myself. So let's get into the pretty pictures and start placing stuff on this tier list. First off, at the top of S tier, I'm going to have to put Krookodile at number 1. These tiers will be ordered from the left side being, so I would just put Mienshao next as well. You're going to see that Crook is to the left of Mienshao. So I believe that this is ordered, and Krookodile is the best Pokemon in the tier above Mienshao, which is second. So keep that in mind for this tier list as well. Krookodile is insane in the metagame for a variety of reasons. I mean, I made an entire video on Krookodile only. With 2 fantastic abilities through Intimidate and Moxie, you have options to either sponge those physical attacks or threaten a sweep with something like Choice Scarf plus Moxie. Its stats are crazy for what you need in the tier, with 92 speed being faster than Roserade, the Rotom appliances, which are at 86, Heracross at 85, Gardevoir at 80. This sets the standard for that kind of speedy Scarfer. If you are slower than Krookodile, you are prone to Krook. And if you're faster than Krook, that is a big, big positive. It is centralizing in that regard, as well as its powerful stab knockoff, which knockoff is just a busted move in this meta. Without things like Mega Stones to knock off, well, in that case, it's knockoff is bad against a Mega Stone because you cannot remove the item. So knockoff is essentially 65 base power. But without Mega Stones and Z moves, knockoff will always be doing this 1.5 times extra damage, which is 97.5 base power, as well as removing an item. Very, very powerful move in our meta we have. Knockoff paired with Pursuit, these are both Dark Stab, and Pursuit is centralizing in the way that if you're a frail, speedy Pokemon, even not being weak to Dark, you can end up taking a lot of damage switching out against Pursuit, so Krook can remove those Pokemon from the game. Something like Swellow, switching out against a Pursuit here, is going to be taking 70 to 82 damage. Effectively, this is a 50-50 roll, or even more in the favor of the Krook, to kill after Stealth Rock's damage, which is absolutely huge. So, Pursuit being able to trap in those mons and essentially remove one from the game as you will is a powerful tool, coupled with removing items. But we haven't even talked about the ground stab, where Earthquake is one of the most spammable moves in competitive as a whole. 100 base power, 100 accuracy, fantastic coverage, especially when coupled with something like Stone Edge in its set. This really has all the tools it needs to hit what it needs to and hit them hard with 117 base attack. Getting into the sets, this doesn't even account for the multiple sets you can use on Krook. It has utility moves such as Taunt and Stealth Rock, so you can even take on a more Focus Sash, Intimidate set here to be able to get off your Taunt to prevent setup and set up your own rocks. So you can be using it as your lead in this regard to offer a lot of utility, or you can use it in the back as a Choice Scarf Moxie Sweeper. Incredibly flexible Pokemon, and very deserving of its S tier rank. Mienshao is also a big deal, as Mienshao has one of the most impressive speed tiers in the tier, with 105 speed. Again, if you're thinking that the tier revolves around Crook, which to some extent it does, Mienshao being 105 speed compared to 92 is huge, especially with Fighting Stab to hit Crook super effectively. Two great abilities in Regenerator, which many people know Regenerator from fighting those Alomomolas and those Amoonguses in BQ as well. But Regenerator comes in handy on Mienshao, especially when using a Life Orb set. You can do something like Fake Out into U-Turn, lose 20% health from your Life Orb, and regen it all off. But in the case you're using a Choice Scarf Reckless set, this suddenly powers up your high jump kick to obscene levels, taking those 3-hit KOs to 2-hit KOs easily, especially on stuff like physically defensive Mandibuzz. They don't stand a chance against that reckless high jump kick. Overall, Mienshao is great in all the utility it offers through U-Turn, Knockoff, and then also its two very powerful sets through Life Orb and Choice Scarf. And just all this coupled with its speed tier, which is very unprecedented for something hitting this hard in the tier. So definitely deserving of S rank as well, in my opinion. Coming in right after Mienshao will have to be Feraligatr, which is definitely a very strong setup sweeper in this tier. Feraligatr has the Sheer Force ability, which powers up moves that have secondary effects by 1.3 times, but it nullifies the effects. So instead of Liquidation, for example, being an 85 base power move with a 20% chance to lower their defense, you essentially get something around 110 base power move that'll never lower the defense. It's a trade-off, but ultimately it's great. And people like to combo this with a Life Orb, as it's funny because Sheer Force and Life Orb has a neat interaction, where Sheer Force considers the first part of Life Orb to be the primary effect, which is the 1.3 times damage, but it considers it the other part, and it loses 1/10 of its max HP after the attack to be a secondary effect. So Sheer Force nullifies the secondary effect of Life Orb, essentially meaning that you get the Life Orb hits without taking the recoil, which is very powerful. Feraligatr can optimize and use Dragon Dance sets, which can make you very speedy. Something like a Jolly Nature Gator at +1 will hit enough speed to outspeed Jolly Crobat, which is a big deal. Or you can run something like Swords Dance as well as a mix-up to really help break stuff and get all the coverage you need through Crunch and Ice Punch, which this has amazing coverage for the tier. And you can even run something like Aqua Jet as well to pick off those pesky users, especially on a Swords Dance set. So Feraligatr, definitely the premier sweeper of the tier, has a nice amount of bulk as well, with 85, 183 bulk to really be able to take those hits and set up easily and possibly sweep a team. Next in A+ tier, we have Crobat, which I love Crobat. It is not quite S tier in my opinion yet. I am monitoring it, and we think that it has an argument for S in the future, but it's just a little bit gated by, I guess we could call it 4 move slot syndrome, where you really want to be running a lot of different moves on it. The powerful moves on Crobat, in my opinion, are U-Turn, Roost. These are two pretty amazing moves, Brave Bird, and then you kind of have to choose between Taunt as well as Defog, but just this set here is amazing. You can be running, I think you should always be running a Jolly Nature with max speed to really utilize the speed tier as the fastest Pokemon in the tier, tied with Jolteon and Aerodactyl. And then max attack can be ran, or max HP to be able to get your utility moves off more often. Crobat is definitely a strong mon in that regard and cannot be slept on in the tier. Nidoqueen is one of the most powerful special breakers in the tier as well, getting another very cool interaction through Sheer Force. which is great. And people are definitely familiar with Nidoking in the tier, in T2 rather, and they know what the Life Orb Sheer Force does on that. So Nidoqueen is essentially the Nidoking of the tier, right? Except for Nidoking is banned, so this takes its place. Its speed tier is a little less than desirable at 76, but you can still run an offensive set on it, or even rock a modest nature, as well as the flexibility you can have in running something like a bold nature to become a very bulky check to those fighting types, as poison does resist fighting, and your ground typing makes you immune to stuff like Volt Switch. So then you can utilize your Stealth Rock or Toxic Spike's utility. Nidoqueen may be somewhat funny seeing this high up, but all the utility it offers, as well as its breaking power and ability to get through checks, even if you're running some kind of offensive set again, you can easily tech in a little Focus Punch as well, which I've talked about before. And Focus Punch will definitely help you hit that Blissey, as well as it gets Superpower. So you can hit that Blissey as well without needing to predict too hard. So Nidoqueen definitely has options. Entei is Entei. It is the first legendary on this list and very, very powerful in the tier. Adamant Nature Entei has a great speed tier. And the reason I say Adamant is it is the only nature that can utilize extreme speed on it. So you do have to be Adamant. But a max attack Entei still outspeeds stuff like the Rotom form. So you outspeed Choice Specs Rotom Heat or Rotom Mow or utility variants with screens, as well as outspeeding base 85 Pokemon such as Jolly Heracross. So the speed tier is great. All you really need is Sacred Fire, E-Speed, and some coverage moves. Slap a Choice Band on it, and you are a threat to be reckoned with in the tier. Definitely deserves its spot in top 6. Celebi, I'm so glad it's getting the love it deserves. Celebi is fantastic. Despite being weak to many, many things, through Psychic Grass not being the best defensive typing by any means, it can run a variety of sets through a Stealth Rock U-turn set, as well as Recover. Or you can even pop on a Choice Scarf set and run things like Leaf Storm, Psychic, and Healing Wish, which are all great on it, with 100 speed tier, being faster than Crook, but slower than Mienshao, so you win some, but you lose some, you know? But it's still pretty good. Celebi has a great role in that, as well as a nasty plot sweeper, where you can forgo having that crazy speed or that crazy bulk or utility, and really just focus on breaking what you need to. And the Nasty Plot Life Orb or Leftover set is great in a tier with all the bulky waters, and definitely deserves 7th on this list. Empoleon is the face of the channel at this point, and Empoleon is fantastic, whether you're using it as a special defensive wall with utility moves through Scald, Toxic, Knockoff, Defog, Stealth Rock, you name it, or as a lead to counter other leads through your Scald, Grass Knot, and Rocks as well, coupled with Aqua Jet utility. Empoleon proves to be one of the strongest Pokemon in the tier repeatedly. And to reference the win rate, it is a top 5 win rate Mon right now with a 76% win rate. And it's also one of the few Pokemon that actually has numbers to back it up, with 2,435 battles at this time, which is a huge sample size, only being rivaled by Entei and Cobalion. So Empoleon proving time and time again that it is a force to be reckoned with. I am putting Slowbro next and keeping it in A+ tier. I believe that Slowbro is one of the more premier physically defensive walls in the tier, access to Regenerator, and you can even, on a Scarf Crook here, you can even switch in your Slowbro. The first hit is doing 50 to 59 on the knockoff, so the next hit is going to be doing 34 to 40.1. So in this range, knockoff into knockoff actually doesn't kill a fully defensive Slowbro, and you can be safe and avoid the crit, switch in, get your item knocked off, regen for your health, and generally be annoying. Slowbro is very, very hard to deal with. and takedown. And the Rocky Helmet set is very powerful for getting that chip you need for priority or sweepers in the back, and it can even enable comps through Trick Room. It's a very, very sturdy Trick Room setter and can spread annoying status through Scald and Toxic. Overall, great Pokemon. Swellow is next on this list, still an A+ tier. Boomburst, Boomburst, Boomburst. Choice Specs Boomburst is very, very scary, and Swellow definitely does amazing damage with it. Other than that, you can U-turn out of bad matchups or Heat Wave for those Steel types that may be able to switch into Boomburst. Swellow is gated just a bit through those aforementioned Steel types like Empoleon, which do not take super effective damage from Heat Wave, and Goodra, which doesn't take that much from Boomburst either on an Assault Vest set. But Swellow can still definitely sweep your team, being at one of the nicer speed tiers at 125 base speed. Reuniclus is fantastic, whether it is your only Trick Room setter and you're just using it as a way to kind of endgame sweep, similar to how you would use a Gator to Dragon Dance or Swords Dance sweep. You can just have a random Reuniclus with Trick Room on your team, and this can be your sweeper as well, kind of winning from the slow side instead of the fast side. And as well as that, Reuniclus is very powerful in Trick Room comps, so Reuniclus is definitely not a Pokemon that should be slept on at all. All the coverage it really needs is Psychic and Energy Ball for a majority of the tier, but you do get other options like Focus Blast as well to hit Steel types, and it can be a very strong Pokemon if left unchecked. And rounding out A+ tier, I'm going to put Sharpedo at the very bottom of A+, which is proving time and time again to be a strong Pokemon. It is not necessarily better than Gator, but it has a few better matchups, such as against Taunt Crobat. All you need to do is Protect to get your speed boost and outspeed and kill Crobat, where a Gator attempting to set up on Crobat essentially cannot get that speed boost, and the speed boost can be essential to win the game. So Sharpedo does have great matchups, and its bad matchups can be offset with its mix-ups, as Sharpedo is a very well-rounded Pokemon, with 120 attack but also 95 special attack. So if you choose to run something in your Sharpedo, such as a modest set with Dark Pulse, you can actually do significant damage to this Slowbro, where a regular Sharpedo would not be doing nearly as much and taking way too much recoil from Rocky Helmet and Life Orb. So it is very powerful and definitely a Pokemon deserving of its A+ tier as a premier cleaner in the tier. Starting off A+, I'm going to go ahead and throw Venomoth here. And Venomoth is yet again another sweeper as well. I would say Venomoth is gated a bit by having actual 4x resistances in the tier. So the Tinted Lens ability is fantastic. And essentially, Tinted Lens moves that are not very effective on a target deal double damage. So if you're hitting a raw Steel type with a Bug move, as Bug is not very effective on Steel, you're not going to be doing not very effective damage. The damage gets doubled, so you are doing neutral damage essentially. But if you were fighting something like a Steel Fairy type, and you hit it with a Bug Buzz, that is 4x resisted. So therefore, the 4x resist is upgraded to a 2x resist. So a 4x resist is a regular resist, and a regular resist does regular damage. And this makes Venomoth very versatile, and it can run many, many status moves. A common set you'll see will be something like Sleep Powder, Roost, Bug Buzz, and Quiver Dance, of course. What the hell? So yeah, you'll run something like this, and your matchups will essentially be gated by whether or not you hit Sleep Powder or not. But you can also run a Substitute plus Disable set. This really helps you out against Choice Scarfers, Choice Banders, or anything that you can Quiver Dance on, sub, disable their attack, and continue your sweep. So Venomoth is again another fantastic sweeper in the meta, and definitely one that it's literally gated by Sleep Powder accuracy. That 75% can win or lose a game most of the time. Cobalion is very powerful and flexible as well. Being at 108 speed, that is notable because it's faster than Mienshao. I find that it also has 4 move slot syndrome as well, as Sub isn't the most powerful set with Infiltrator Crobat in the tier. But with that aside, you can still sub up, you can Swords Dance, and an Iron Head in close combat is nice coverage, but it is gated a little bit by the big physically defensive walls in the tier, such as Alomomola and whatnot. But its utility through Volt Switch, Stealth Rock, and generally being able to pick the moves you need for your team does warrant an A placement, without a doubt. Rotom Heat is very powerful, having a very strong fire stab, so this is just like Entei, where Sacred Fire, Overheat, very powerful moves for taking on a lot of the meta that we can see, as well as for the water types that Overheat would resist, you get Thunderbolt or Volt Switch. Rotom Heat can run multiple sets, whether it's Scarf, Specs, or Screens, and is overall one of the best pivots in the tier. Arcanine is baby Entei, but don't get me wrong, Arcanine is definitely not weak by any flip of the coin. Arcanine has a niche over Entei, where its speed tier, you can run extreme speed on Jolly. So this does let it be faster than Entei, and this speed can be important for fighting against a non-locked Krookodile, Roserade, or I guess those are the 2 main ones? Yeah, I would say those are the 2 main ones, but those matchups can be niches as well. And you get to run E-Speed on a Jolly nature, so this can come into handy. You also get arguably better coverage through close combat and Wild Charge, and useful abilities through Intimidate and Flash Fire. So Arcanine definitely deserving of A tier, and it is the highest usage Pokemon in the tier right now with near 50%, which is pretty good. I guess I cannot talk about Arcanine without talking about the defensive set as well, so I might as well give some respect to that. You can run a defensive Arcanine as well with something like Intimidate, Will-O-Wisp, and Morning Sun as some moves you can use here. Morning Sun offering recovery and Will-O-Wisp spreading status, but overall I find the offensive set a bit stronger, but this is still a viable option for your Arcanine. And definitely the combination of the 2 sets is what gives it the A tier rating. Sylveon being next up on the list. Sylveon doesn't have many switch-ins at all if you're using a modest choice spec set, with those Pixelate Hyper Voices nuking everything, as well as Psyshock coverage for what you need. You can even run Shadow Ball to hit the rare Bronzong. So Sylveon is great for all of those reasons, as well as being a fighting resist, which is important, a dark resist, which is also important, and being able to utilize a bold Calm Mind Wish Protect set that can be very endgamey if your opponent is not prepared to deal with it. So Sylveon definitely deserving of that A tier rating. Blissey being next up has a lot of utility. Wish, Soft Boiled, Stealth Rock, Thunder Wave. And if your opponent is not equipped to deal with Blissey by having a strong physical attacker, Blissey can get out of hand very quickly and win games on its own. Notably, Celebi does not get Psyshock, so Blissey does check Celebi pretty well, to be honest. There are ways Celebi can play around this through its natural cure ability to heal off the toxic as well as recover, but Blissey still is a great option to many of these things, as well as a protect to make Mienshao do recoil damage, which is quite funny. Hippo enables sand teams, and standalone is a very powerful mon. Hippo does have insane defenses, 108 HP, 118 defense, and a very respectable 112 attack. Again, Sandstream is not banned, Drought and Drizzle are, but Sandstream and Snow Warning are not. So Hippo can come in, and it can set up rocks, it gets slack off recovery. The Sandstorm can be useful as well. If you lead Hippo into something that is a lead that is going to take Sandstorm damage. So, I guess the most common lead like that, you could see a lead Tentacruel, I suppose. That would be one. Or a lead Crobat. But you can get that immediate chip on Pokemon like that. Oh, a Sash user like Galvantula. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. So the Sandstorm can break their Sash or their Sturdy, and you can definitely deal with that just like that. So all you need to do is Rocks, let the Sandstorm passively break their Sash, and then hit them with a strong Earthquake to remove them. Hippo does have very nice niches, and overall, even outside of Sand teams or dedicated Sand teams with partners like Stoutland, Hippo is still a threat to be reckoned with and must be respected. Roserade is up next and is very powerful. Roserade benefits a lot in this tier, as it does have very powerful moves to deal with everything that you possibly need to. And Roserade is also a Pokemon that it's going to benefit a lot by fighting against those bulky water types to a large extent. Has a lot of utility moves through Toxic Spike, Spikes, and Sleep Powder. Roserade is gated a little bit, with its base speed being only 90, which is still very good, but it is slower than Krookodile, which means that Scarf Roserade cannot outspeed it, and unlocked or unscarfed Krookodile will outspeed and take advantage of its low defense. Emboar is going to be up next, and Emboar is my boy. Without a doubt, far and away, one of the hardest hitters in the tier, with the Reckless ability powering up Flare Blitz as well as Wild Charge. And if you look at the tier and you look at Emboar, there are very, very few switches to Banded Emboar. Through its fire, electric, and its fighting coverage, it can really handle everything very well. It is also a fire type that has part fighting, so it does not take 25% from rocks. It only takes 12.5, so it makes a great Pokemon to use on offensive teams that may not be able to deal with rocks as easily, but appreciate the fire type coverage. And to round out A tier, I have Chesnaught. And Chesnaught is amazing. It is very, very bulky. And if we go ahead and look at Chesnaught, 88 HP, 122 defense, and a fantastic typing and grass fighting. This is going to help you out against mono grass attackers such as Shaman. Water attackers, Gator, are going to have a very hard time breaking through this, especially in Impish sets, which maximizes its defense. And it's a great line of defense against Crook and Mienshao as well. Chesnaught is a bit gated by how prominent Crobat is, as well as Nidoqueen and Entei, but it can check these big three very nicely through a combination of Leech Seed, Synthesis, Spiky Shield, Wood Hammer, you name it. It definitely has options. And oh my gosh, looking at the tiers like this, I realized I forgot about one of my favorites, and I'm so sorry to Heracross. Heracross is not an A tier Pokemon. I forgot to put him in A+ tier, and I'm going to put Heracross just above Slowbro. And I'm so sorry to Heracross for forgetting about you. But Heracross is very, very powerful, being a strong Guts attacker. This is like Emboar in a similar way, where a Flame Orb Guts Facade set in combination with Close Combat and Knockoff has very few switch-ins in the tier, and it even has a Scarf Moxie set, which Bug Fighting type is fantastic in resisting Dark and Fighting, which are very prominent, as well as Ground as well. All of these typings being very prominent in the meta for sure. It is just a bit gated as a Scarfer by being slower than Crook, which doesn't always come into play in particular, but come chip, it can. And Crobats being around and dying to a single Brave Bird no matter what does gate Heracross slightly. Okay, we are through the S, A+, and A. We are not even close to getting through this video, so let me have a sip of water. And let's get into A- tier, starting with Goodra. We talked about Goodra a little bit already, And Goodra is that premier special defense wall, and it also has the Sap Sipper ability, which can come in handy for absorbing those sleep powders, makes a great Venomoth counter in that regard, and also it can check Swellow very efficiently as well through the Assault Vest set. So Goodra really being that splashable Spadefwall on teams, I would say it is gated by being physically defense weak a little bit, as its Phys Def stat is a little to be desired at 70 base defense. So it really creates this illusion of an unbreakable wall on the special side, but is very easily broken on the physical side. And it also doesn't get a recovery move like Roost or Soft Boiled, so that stinks. And I also forgot to mark this A-. We are starting the A- tier. I believe I said A-, but I did not have the tier set up, so my apologies. Next up, we have Toxicroak. Toxicroak is one of the best Empoleon counters in the tier, and that is why you see it so high. The Dry Skin ability, being able to take those Scalds, Toxic, is going to be immune, as Toxicroak is a poison type, and it has fantastic utility, whether you're using a Swords Dance Sucker Punch set or a Nasty Plot Vacuum Wave set. Its 85 base speed is great for breaking through the fatter targets, but it can utilize priority moves on whatever setup sets you choose to use to really earn its place in A-. Noivern is also fantastic, and it's going to be up here next in A-, 123 base speed, I believe. Yep. So the reason it's quite a bit lower than Swellow is honestly the difference between 125 and 123. When Swellow is as common as it is, we have Swellow at, by usage, the 6th most used Pokemon in the tier. So being slower than that and having a similar role is a big deal. But Noivern can also provide defensive utility as well, which Swellow does not offer. Dragon typing can be great for resisting fire, water, and grass moves in particular, which Swellow out of that only resists grass. And Noivern also has a similar role with Boomburst as well and Draco Meteor to hit things very hard. Next up, we have Fortress, which makes a fantastic lead, one of the best steel types. And is this the first? No, we have Cobalion. So aside from Cobalion, Fortress makes one of the first steel types we see. And unfortunately, it's a steel type like Cobalion that does not resist flying, so that's why Crobat's so high. But Fortress offers a lot of utility through its huge defense stats, as well as a rare pivot move on a Pokemon like this. It gets Volt Switch, so on top of its great HP and defense, making it a very good, physically bulky and sturdy Pokemon. It gets Volt Switch, Rapid Spin, Stealth Rocks, Spikes, and Toxic Spikes. So you really cannot put Fortress that much lower, as it's going to do its job extremely well as getting up its hazards and removing the opponents. Next in the tier, I'm going to put Donphan, and this is a little controversial, I will say, to put it this high, but I think Donphan is fantastic, especially if you're using it in the back as an impish wall. You get rare utility through Ice Shard. So Ice Shard can be great for picking off a chipped Crobat, a chipped Krookodile, chipped Celebi, chipped Swellow. That word is probably annoying to hear over and over. And it also gets Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin. So on top of being extremely sturdy, a powerful Earthquake off its stab as well. Donphan is just a great Pokemon in my opinion. And even though I don't think its role in the lead is as good, it can still be used very well in the lead to some extent. But in the back as a pivot, I also think this is a great spinner and should be considered on a multitude of teams. Next up, I'm going to put Doublade here. And this is also controversial. I can see people vouching for this to go into A tier as well. But I'm going to put Doublade in A- because I think Doublade is fantastic. But it really, and it's one of the only steel types that can actually switch into Crobat. Keep that in mind. But even then, I think it trades 1-for-1 with a lot of Pokemon here. I think Mienshao and Crook are like Doublade risks being crippled by knockoff, which is a big deal. And once it's knocked off, then a lot of things can break through it. Even if it doesn't get knocked off, a lot of things can outright kill it in one hit, such as Entei. Celebi, Nasty Plot set, can break through it as well. It does have to fear Shadow Sneak. Nidoqueen can outright kill it. You wall Cobalion, which is good. But yeah, Doublade makes a very sturdy defensive wall, but I think it is prone to all the knockoff in this tier, and that really does hurt it quite a bit. A lot of positives to give Doublade, but I think it is just too easily revenge killed, and Shadow Sneak doesn't do enough to really stop that either, in my opinion. Slowking is up next, and Slowking just faces a lot of competition from other Spadef walls as well, notably Goodra being one of them, but also from Slowbro. Like, the difference between Slowking and Slowbro is Slowbro can switch into Crook, Mienshao, and even Crobat, and Slowking really can't. So Slowking is going to suffer because of that, but it can still be that amazing Boom Burst check, as well as have a phasing move in Dragon Tail. So you can phase out special sweepers like even Venomoth if it's not running Sleep Powder. You can phase it out, but then again, Venomoth can just disable Dragon Tail. So it is a win some, you lose some. Slowking can also run Psyshock to help that matchup a bit, but yeah, I think Slowking just faces a lot of competition. I'll put Mandibuzz up next. This is one that people can argue as high as A+, as middle as A, but I'm putting it A-, and I expect this opinion to be somewhat controversial, but Mandibuzz is, I think as a defogger, it is gated by being weak to rocks. You do take 25% to rocks. It's very hard to decide what moves you want to bring on it through U-turn, knockoff, foul play, brave bird, defog, roost. I guess those are the big ones. And I also think that once this is chipped, it is too slow and a lot of things can capitalize on it. So even if you take one Pokemon, like if a Gator tries breaking through you and it dies to foul play, then the Mandibuzz is not going to be fast enough to heal on anything in the tier. I also think Mandibuzz is possible to easily predict and play around. So even though you can predict Scarf Crook or Mienshao, which are really two of the big reasons why Mandibuzz is used to check those, I think you can call those out and double around it very well. In my team in particular, I use Scarf Crook, and if there's a Mandibuzz, I very rarely will attack into it. I will normally go hard Emboar. Other teams may have Swellow or Noivern, or things to really bait in that Mandibuzz, force it to take Rock's Chip, and really bully it like that. So I think Mandibuzz isn't as high as people say. I still think it's very, very good, being an A-, but I personally don't consider it an A or an A+ mon. Next up, we have Gligar. And Gligar is a Pokemon that I think is very underused in the tier right now. But Gligar is fantastic. It has very good physical defense. Again, it does suffer a problem where once its Eviolite is knocked off, like Doublade, you're going to lose a lot of your bulk. But this is different in the way that you can run U-turn, knockoff, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, Defog. You get a lot of utility. And it's got to be up there with Mandibuzz, honestly, for me. I think it checks a lot of things similarly that Mandibuzz checks, and it's not weak to rock. So don't sleep on Gligar. This Pokemon is very broken. The only thing it's really missing is foul play that Mandibuzz does have. And Brave Bird is kind of nice from Mandibuzz, but you can run flying moves on Gligar, I guess. We'll see. Okay, so next I have Magneton, and Magneton is another steel type, but it doesn't have that much defensive utility. Magneton is fantastic. It has Volt Switch and Flash Cannon, which is really all the coverage you need. It can hit the pesky water types in the tier as well, water ground types, through HP Grass. So Magneton is a great answer for disposing of those. It can be a great bait. And also the Magnapole set does completely trap in Empoleon. So a lot of utility for Magneton, definitely deserves A-, even if it's not utilized as much right now. Rotom is funny because it is fantastic on paper. Where's my Rotom? There it is. It is fantastic on paper, but I think in practice it struggles just a bit more. It's similar to Rotom Heat, and the reason you could think Rotom is better, right, is because the Leaf Storm coverage is better against Gator and Crook. But against a lot of the rest of the tier, Rotom Heat's coverage is just better. You don't really want to be using Leaf Storm into a whole lot other than these main mons here. And even the Scarf Rotom set is going to be slower than Scarf Crook. So a lot of reasons I think Rotom is struggling just a bit right now. I used to think this was way better because of the prominence of Crook, but yeah, I don't see it as much anymore. I definitely think Rotom Heat is better, and even Rotom Heat can run HP Grass to get rid of water grounds as well. So yeah, I think Rotomo's utility just isn't as good as Heat's, and definitely deserving of A-, no lower, but A- nonetheless. Next, maybe this placement is too low. I think it could maybe go higher. It could really go anywhere from mid A- to high A-, but Kabutops is one of the best suicide leads in the tier right now. I think I'm biased against it because this set on Kabutops is countered by Empoleon. Even the Spadef Empoleon does counter Kabutops, I would say. But other than that, Kabutops leads fantastically into any physical attacker, anything with U-turn. Weak armor is crazy. After you get hit by a physical attack, you become faster than all Scarfers in the tier. And Kabutops is really, if you don't know how to play around it, it can be extremely scary. As Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin really lets you control those hazards as well. And it's just one of the best suicide leads. But other than that, it doesn't have that many roles. So I leave it an A-, but it's very powerful. Rhyperior is a bit underrated. It certainly has the physical bulk to take on a lot of the threats in the tier. Its special side is lacking a bit, but you can pair that with partners to offset it. And Rhyperior is just extremely powerful, especially in Crobat Mandibuzz meta. When people are using these two as their defoggers, Rhyperior is just amazing against those. Even if they U-turn out on you, you can get a very powerful hit on whatever is coming in. Rhyperior also has Stealth Rock's utility and can utilize Toxic to spread status on fats such as Alomomola. So look out for Rhyperior. Very powerful Pokemon. Next up, we have another spinner, Tentacruel. And I think Tentacruel is great. Definitely does a lot in the tier. 100 base speed is very impressive. It is faster than Crook if it's not scarfed. And it's probably the best spinner because Clear Body makes it so your speed isn't lowered when you come in on webs. You have a lot of utility through knockoff, Toxic Spikes, Icy Wind. But I don't think Tentacruel has ever been overwhelming to play unless you have a team that is excruciatingly weak to it. Celebi can deal with it through Psychic, and even Emboar can Wild Charge it to hell. It's going to take a lot of damage from knockoff because even though people run it bold, its base defense is still only 65. It's its lowest stat, in fact. So I think Tentacruel can be easily bullied, and not having a recovery move is hard for it too. But I would say it's one of the best spinners in the tier if you just throw it on a team. Gardevoir has high usage, low win rates, but I think it's still fantastic. Psychic and Moonblast in the tier hit everything extremely hard. You can use Thunderbolt or Focus Blast to hit Empoleon, so you really have all the coverage you need. even for your steel types. That's like one very good thing about Gardevoir, as well as utilizing Trick or Healing Wish. And even though I see Scarf often, I think Specs is great too. And Trace is overall a great ability in the tier as well. You can trace Regenerator Mienshao, Sheer Force Crook, Sheer Force Crook, wow. Sheer Force Gator, Intimidate Crook. So all these things can be very, very good. And even Sheer Force Nidoqueen. So yeah, you can steal a lot of very good abilities. I think Gardevoir is definitely underrated, deserving of A-. I don't see it that much higher because the Scarf set is gated by Krookodile to a large extent, but definitely a good mon. Whimsicott is very underrated as well. I don't see people use this that much, but the Encore set is fantastic to be able to switch into any setup sweeper and get a Prankster Encore off, or a Prankster Stun Spore, whatever it may be. You can lock setup sweepers into that move and make it completely unpreventable. So that is fantastic. 116 speed is also great. You are faster than Mienshao, so a Life Orb Mienshao lead, if they, make a mistake and they expect you to be a defensive Whimsicott lead, you can really hit them hard with a Scarf or Specs Moonblast. So that can be really, really good. Whimsicott has a lot of utility. Not a whole lot of offensive presence outside of its grass moves and fairy moves. It doesn't get the best coverage, but that is really all it needs. And it even gets Prankster Taunt, which definitely is worth something. So I could see Whimsicott going up in the future, but for now, I think I am content with its placement here. Shaman has uses over Celebi, notably not being weak to knockoff or 4 times weak to U-turn. And Shaman also has Seed Flare, which can really break specially defensive walls. That helps you break things that you wouldn't normally be able to break as easily on the special side. So yeah, I think Shaman is really, really good. Over Celebi, I guess you don't get as strong Scarf sets, I feel, because you don't get U-turn. So Celebi is the stronger Scarfer. And Celebi is probably the stronger Life Orb user as well. But Shaman gets all the coverage that Celebi gets as well, which is, I guess, its biggest competition. But Seed Flare and a better typing, arguably, is what gives it a niche in the tier. I will do Seismitoad and Swampert together. 2 water grounds I just placed together here. I'm putting Seismitoad a little bit above Swampert, but honestly, Water Absorb isn't that crazy of a niche. It is a decent deterrent, but with Empoleon running Grass Knot now, and I guess dodging Scalds generally, and avoiding Shark from spamming Liquidation on everything is good. But both of these I feel are great Pokemon. Swampert being right next to it because of its offensive capabilities, actually having a better attack than Seismitoad, and the exact same moves, and even Swampert has better bulk. The only reason Seismitoad really is higher is the Water Absorb deterrence, but these two are largely interchangeable, in my opinion. Both very powerful, and do not sleep on offensive Swampert sets. An Adamant Banded set can really punch some holes in a team. I have Metagross up next, and I think Metagross is another great Pokemon, makes a great lead. It's a rare Explosion lead. Can run a ton of coverage, can run an Assault Vest set, can run a Banded set. But I just don't think Metagross has been utilized effectively yet. Like I said, this is my current thoughts as of September 6th, 2021. And I think people just haven't learned how to play with Metagross quite yet, so it does make it a little lower of a placement. And maybe we'll see some meta shifts to really help it out, but at the moment, I think Metagross is just a little too slow at base 70 speed, a few too many weaknesses to the big typings, being weak to dark, being regularly taking damage from fighting moves, because Steel Psychic isn't a weakness, but it's not a resist either. And Bullet Punch not being everything it was cut out to be, really, in my opinion. There's just stuff that really isn't gonna care to take a Bullet Punch except for the rare Swellow. Like, I think A Solvest Pursuit Trapping Swellow is pretty good, forcing 50-50s between BP and Pursuits, or even a Banded set for that matter. But yeah, I think other Pokemon utilize that role as well, too. Maybe we will see this go up in the future, but at the moment, I think the bottom of A- tier is more than fair. And if you disagree about that, then let me know. Hoopa is honestly incredible. Hits very hard. Psychic Ghost typing, very few switch-ins. Thunderbolt, Focus Blast, Sub, Nasty Plots. The problem with Hoopa is it's gated by its typing, with Crook in the tier. Or really anything, even Swellow or Crobat can run Pursuit. So, yeah, Pursuit is really hurting this Pokemon a lot. It can't really be any lower than this, but I also don't think it can be any higher. But definitely one of the best breakers. It's just Pursuit is just so good. And the best Pokemon in the tier, in my opinion, is an avid user of it. So definitely keeps Hoopa down, unfortunately. And Ditto's Ditto. Obviously, Choice Scarf can revenge kill a whole lot in the tier. But it's never overwhelming. It's never crazy. I just think it makes sense to have Ditto in A- tier. A lot of stuff you can copy as well, such as a Gator boost, a Moxie boost off Crook. You can revenge kill Swellow with Swellow. Overall, I would say Ditto is pretty good. I mean, it's Ditto. There's not too much else to say. Okay, so next I'm going to put Durant in B+. And Durant is a great Pokemon. It's just blind, great speed tier at 108, being faster than Mienshao, but just gated by Hustle, gated by a low Spadef, decent Fizdef, lets it take some moves. I'll let you check that out. But yeah, I don't have much to say about Durant other than, oh, it's 109 speed, so even faster than Cobalion, which is even better. But definitely gated by this ability here. Hustle, so much so that it's almost worth to possibly use Swarm if you hate missing. But it can make a Fringe Scarfer, it can make a Fringe Setup Sweeper through Cone Claws. I just don't think it's anything quite A-worthy. Makes a great gatekeeper of B. Meowstic is Screen Central, and Meowstic as a whole isn't that powerful, but Screens is a powerful archetype. Screens, Gator behind Screens no longer loses to Mandibuzz. That's a really good thing to know. And a lot of things avoid KOs from Scarf Crook and even High Jump Kick Mienshao behind Screens. So, Meowstic just doesn't have the most variety in its sets outside of Screens, but it makes a great Pokemon to put in B+ because of how well it enables that. Snorlax, I don't think the AV set is that good. I think the best set is either Curse or Band, but AV can still check your Swellows, your Celebis, your Reunicluses, your Rotoms even to some extent. So yeah, Snorlax, this one can even be higher if you so think so. I think it is an A- candidate as well, but with all the fighting types in the meta, and all the ways to really break it, even with a Curse up, stuff like Emboar, Mienshao can still one-shot right through it. So the right team can still deal with it. And then it is a little more prone on the special side, so stuff like Sylveon, Specs Hyper Voice, I believe can break through it. So yeah, Curse, Rest is great, but I think there are options to deal with it. Controversial take, Alomomola in B+. Alomomola is a great Pokemon and 100% something you need to take into consideration in team building. But Alomomola as a standalone mon has never been something that has to be like an A or an A+ Pokemon. Like Mandibuzz is a better standalone mon. Blissey is a better standalone mon. You kind of have to use Alomomola on a team that already has this fat stuff. Because the Blissey, the Mandibuzz, and the Alomomola, they complement each other well through their Wish support, their Heal Bell support, knockoff support, toxic support. So Alomomola is a piece of the puzzle, but on its own, it's not overwhelming. But I cannot understate enough, prepare for this Pokemon. Run grass types. Run strong special attackers, because Alomomola is pretty high usage in the tier, and if you're not prepped for it, your team can crumble to a Blissey plus Alomomola core. On its own, I just cannot justly say it's A- at the time. I think there's other physical answers if you look at it in a blanket that can do Alomomola's job, but this Pokemon is still very good. What a tongue twist. Let's move on. Cress is, I would say, similar to Mandibus, like in the issue that once you get damage on Cress, even though it has a recovery move through Moonlight, you can pressure Cress very well to just not make it able to set up again. Cress's biggest thing is honestly Trick Room. Like, being the bulkiest Pokemon in the tier, you can just lead it, not die to anything at all. 120, 128, 130 bulk is obscene. You can lead it, get off the Trick Room, switch it out, and bring it in later on a weaker Pokemon and take another hit. Like, you don't even have to run Moonlight on the set, on the Trick Room set, because you have the bulk to be able to take it. So Cresselia offensively is not anything too notable. You do get Moonblast to destroy Crook and Mienshao, which is great. You also get Psychic moves for Nidoqueen, and you have it. But as a standalone, I think Calm Mind is counterable for sure through Dark types in the tier. Even one Sharpedo flinch through Dark Pulse will break it, and Crunch will certainly get it in range of a lot of your other attackers. Yeah, Cresselia just isn't fast enough to reliably get off that healing without giving up too much of its bulk. So B+ tier, very solid. Exploud is falling out of favor a little bit, but it's still very good. Soundproof makes you you're always able to switch into Boomburst users, whether you are a Noivern, a Swellow, or funny enough, another Exploud. And it just hits stuff. Not much else to say. Exploud clicks Boomburst, and even though it has other great coverage moves, I would say it's most known for Boomburst. It's funny, like Soundproof is literally better at its niche for checking Swellow. So don't bother really using Scrappy. It's all about that Soundproof, all about that loud. Escavalier is very underrated also. Being able to take on a lot of roles. It has very good bulk. Let's check it out. Yeah, 70, 105, 105. It's not known for its speed, but it doesn't need it. It's going to be able to check what you need to, whether you're an Assault Vest set or even a Banded set to get off a lot of damage. Even a Life Orb set can do a lot of damage. Pokemon thrives in Trick Room and ultimately can be glue on a lot of teams. I look forward to see if more people use this. The problem with all these steel types is how weak they are to Crobat. Like, Bug Steel doesn't resist flying, which stinks. But Escavalier is still a notable Pokemon nonetheless. Stoutland is up next. You'll only see Stoutland on sand teams, but Stoutland is very good. It's definitely better than Sandslash, in my opinion, on sand in T1. As at +2 speed Adamant, you hit 518, and Mienshao at +1 speed Jolly, which is Scarf Mienshao, hits 508. So Adamant, Banded, Stoutland in the sand is faster than Scarf Mienshao, which is a big thing. Other than that, doesn't have that many niches, but being one of the fastest Pokemon around is enough to put it in B+. I'm going to do Frostlass next, and Frostlass is very interesting. One of the better suicide leads as well through Icy Wind, Destiny Bond. It's only this low because it doesn't have rocks. It has spikes instead. But overall, it's actually great. Destiny Bond on a Sash lead can be really annoying, especially when coupled with Icy Wind. If you Icy Wind into Destiny Bond a Crook, you get rid of it. And I'm not sure if Ice Beam kills. I guess we can check. 252. Just throw on a random Ice Beam to see. Like, I think it's not going to be enough to kill, is my gut feel. And you might kill in PPO, to be honest. So, overall, a pretty good lead. And ghost types can be great for preventing Mienshao from clicking high jump kick, but that's kind of assuming you kept the Frostlass alive, which is easier said than done. Aerodactyl loses to a lot of common leads. I haven't seen that much use out of the offensive sets, whether it be Life Orb or Band. Ultimately, there isn't a very good flying type stab on it. Like, the strongest move you have is Fly, and the strongest one-turn move you have is Wing Attack or Pluck. So Aerodactyl doesn't have that much in the flying stab department. Really, if it got Brave Bird, it would be a totally different story. And then its rock type moves can be inaccurate, whether you choose Stone Edge or Rock Blast. And then that pretty much means Earthquake is one of your most reliable attacks. And at that point, why not just use Scarf Crook almost? But yeah, 130 speed is still notable. It's just in the lead matchup, it loses to a lot. Rock Tomb, Crook, Rock Tomb Kabutops, Scald into Ajet, Empoleon, even Sash, Crook, yeah. Fortress gets to spin stuff away, Donphan spins stuff away. Yeah. Rotom's just Volt Switch on it, get it down to its Sash, and then you get picked off. So I think Aerodactyl is not in the best spots, but still deserving of B+ for all its positives. Tyrantrum is hard to justify any higher than this, but it is a great Pokemon. Being a rock dragon type is great stab. Head Smash hits extremely hard. 70 speed, or I believe it's 71 speed. And the 70 speed tier is quite common. So being 1 point faster is rather troll. You can hit those Metagrosses with an Earthquake if they go for a Meteor Mash. As Bullet Punch, you might be out of range. Hoopa, if you're Jolly, you can outspeed and kill that. Same with Magneton, if it's Timid, Specs, or something like that. Tyrantrum has a very troll speed tier, and it is a rare switch in the Crobat in the tier. So I think it is quite the good Pokemon, and deserving of B+. Bronzong is another Pokemon that does a whole lot. Steel Psychic with Levitate is fantastic typing, but it is passive, and I don't think people have quite been utilizing it too well. Has a lot of switch-ins, but Crook, it's still going to knock off. Mienshao, it can still knock off into U-turn, into high jump kick. Yeah, Bronzong gets bullied, and it doesn't have a recovery move, so despite having Stealth Rocks and Trick Room, Explosion, and you have it, it can be tricky to use. And I think B+ is fair for it, because its typing is quite good, in all honesty, but it's just not quite amazing. Next up on the list, at the top of B tier, and this can go either way, B+ or B. Barbaracle is great. A Jolly Barbaracle at +2 will outspeed Mienshao as well, if it's Scarf. So Barbaracle is 68 speed, but at +2, if you're Jolly, you're going to hit 516 speed. So that is 8 points faster than Scarf Mienshao, therefore actually giving it a good niche as a Focus Sash, Shell Smash, Sweeper. So look out for Barbaracle. Its moves being boosted by Tough Claws as well makes it hit a lot harder than you may believe. Next up, I'm going to put Medicham. And Medicham, honestly, is only this low because of Mienshao. Mienshao outclasses it in many ways. The few niches Medicham has is a stronger high jump kick, Zen Headbutt Stab, and Bullet Punch. But I think Mienshao's utility in Regenerator or Reckless even rival the damage, but still, Medicham hits harder, don't get me wrong. Mienshao is a better speed tier, 105 to 80. Even Medicham as a Scarfer is slower than Crook. And then Mienshao also gets U-turn and knockoff. So Medicham as a standalone Mon can still be very high. I can see people arguing for A- somewhere. But with Mienshao in the tier, I have to put it in B. Just comparatively, I don't think its niches to Mienshao are that great. Feel free to disagree, and let me know if you think so in the comments. Virizion up next. I think Virizion is also pretty good. You can utilize a screen set on this too, with a Light Clay, Reflect, and Light screen. Sword Stance sets, Calm Mind sets, but the problem with every single set is Infiltrator Crobat ruins its day. even if you Stone Edge it with the Life Orb Virizion on the Switch, you may not kill Crobat. So, and you have to get that play right. If you do a Grass move or a Fighting move, you're going to do no damage. So, Virizion really being gated by Crobat more than Cobalion, in my opinion. Steel typing offers more than the Grass typing here. So yeah, I'm going to put Virizion in B. I think it does have a lot of potential, though. Another mon with potential is Sigilyph. 97 speed tier is also quite good. Faster than Arcanine, faster than Roserade, faster than Adamant Entei, faster than Crook. A lot of potential here, just hasn't been too explored. There are Psycho Shift Flame Orb sets where you can burn your opponent, essentially like 100% accurate Will-O-Wisp, and then run Roost with that. Those slower sets could be used, as well as Calm Mind or Cosmic Power, plus Stored Power and Roost and all that. All that could be used on Sigilyph to some success. I also think Specs, it also gets Tinted Lens. Like a lot of fantastic abilities on this, whether it's Magic Guard or Tinted Lens. You can use Magic Guard Life Orb, Tinted Lens Specs. There's a lot of stuff going for it. I could see this one going up over time, but again, at the time of this video, I just don't think it's impacting the meta that crazy, and that'll be the habit for a lot of these low tiers as well. They're definitely good, just not impacting the meta. Moltres is great for obvious reasons. Fire Flying breaks through a lot. You don't like those Aloe Blissey cores. I mean, Moltres can Hurricane them with Specs, Fire Blast them. You turn out a bad matchups. It can really break a lot. It's just gated by rocks. It takes 50% every time it switches in from rocks. And Defoggers and Rapid Spinners can be somewhat hard to get on a team and get them reliably. We don't have a Rotom Wash or Gliscor. We have Gligar. But yeah, no, Moltres, just really dependent on keeping those rocks off. And if someone formed a team around that and really managed to keep those rocks off, Moltres can be definitely very viable. I wouldn't quite say A- because of how weak to rocks it is. But yeah, definitely B, and it could be higher in the future. Honchkrow is awesome, honestly. Can be a mean mixed attacker, something like a Naughty Nature, Sucker Punch, Brave Bird, Heat Wave, Night Slash, and then a crit set. It gets Super Luck. Insomnia, you can switch in on Venomoth. Has a lot going for it. Not the fastest. I believe this is another like troll speed tier. Yeah, it's also 71, which is notable. It's faster than Metagross, but low bulk, great offenses, amazing Sucker Punch, but weak to rocks, very frail. It's hard to justify in a lot of teams, but it certainly needs to be ranked, so I'm putting it in B. Uxie is similar to Cress. It doesn't get a healing move, but it does get rocks as well as Memento, so you can really capitalize on the momentum right off the bat. Uxie is mainly here because it enables Trick Room. There are Calm Mind, Draining Kiss sets you can use potentially, but none of that is what's impacting the placement personally, other than it being just a reliable, bulky Psychic type that can set up Trick Room, set up rocks, and really start the game on a nice pace. The Zoradin Smoojmon, I don't even know this mon's name, just kidding, Bibarel. Definitely great behind screens, stuff like Return, Quick Attack, Aqua Jet. Simple boosted Sword Stance, so Sword Stance is supposed to give you +2, but under a simple boost you get +4. For reference, Manaphy's Tail Glow is +3, so Bibarel gets a bigger attack boost than Manaphy gets a special attack boost. Kinda nuts. The priority moves are disgusting, with Aqua Jet and Quick Attack really hitting everything. There's very little that won't cover. And then with a Jolly Nature, you outspeed stuff like Exploud. I forget Bibarel's speeds here. I think it's pretty, 71. So yeah, you outspeed all those base 70s as well and can really do some damage. So overall, I mean, you're faster than Emboar too. Keep that in mind. So yeah, no, really, really good. Honestly, great Pokemon. Faster than Sylveon. You have it. So overall, great sweeper in the tier. Not even kidding. Espeon has Magic Bounce, and that is a great trait. Just doesn't have the strongest matchups, with Mienshao being U-turn, Crook being knockoff. Dazzling Gleam isn't strong enough to really punish those comparatively to Stab Moonblast off other potential leads, but it's a Magic Bounce user. You can set up screens and still be a pestance to fight, so no lower than B, but a very comfortable B nonetheless. Dragalge is a great mon. It definitely has adaptability, which powers up its dragon moves and its poison moves, which could be great to break through your opposing team. The only true resists are really Doublade and Empoleon, and you can be Focus Blast or Shadow Ball for those. Great on Trick Room. I think Dragalge is just neutered as well for a similar reason as Goodra. Really bulky on that special side, not as bulky, but also weak on the physical side, so it can be bullied through. Lack of a recovery move. Few pros, of course, it's amazing coverage for what it needs, as well as Toxic Spikes to spread status, but even Dragon Tail is a phasing move. But overall, it's saved from B- for all that, but it's not B+, it's comfortable B. We'll do Quagsire and Gastrodon together. I don't really care which order these are in, but I'll just put them here. Both water ground types, just not as much utility as Seismitoad and Swampert, notably. These two get rocks, these two don't, being Quagsire and Gastro. But Quagsire and Gastrodon get Recover, which can be great. They get Curse sets, so Curse Unaware from Quagsire and Curse Storm Drain from Gastrodon. Both can be really good and really endgame quickly. The only time you would really use Curse Gastrodon, I think, is to take advantage of its better special bulk than Quagsire. While Quagsire's Unaware generally can be really good to set up and win against a lot of stuff. So this is a good blanket check through Unaware. You can make a case that this utility makes it go up, but a lot of grass types in the meta, a lot of stuff that really doesn't care about Unaware. Stuff like Guts Heracross won't care, it just blows through you. So because of all that, B. Low B, not B-. Galvantula is going to round off our B tier. And for Galvantula, I think it's actually quite good in the tier. I mean, anything like here and above, honestly, anything in B- and above is still like a really good option to use. One of the best sticky web setters, other than this, you have Slurpuff, and you have Smeargle, and you have Shuckle. That's it. And Galvantula has a good speed tier at 108. That is faster than Mienshao. You can Scarf it and Energy Ball a Crook. That can be fun. You can surprise a Mienshao with Volt Switch. It's funny, so much of the tier revolves around those. A Bug move for Celebi. So even grass types can't switch into this electric type because of stab bug moves. And overall, even though you don't usually see it that offensively, the mixture of roles between its offensive sets and its lead sash sets are effective enough to save it from B-, so B tier. Drapion is our first B-. Overall, this is a great Pokemon that I want to see people use more, but it does take competition from Crook. It does have poison typing to absorb T-Spikes, and also pretty good poison stab moves. But I can't say that much about it other than people will use this for its defensive utility, and even its defensive typing isn't fantastic by any means. Sure, you're immune to psychic moves, and you resist Ghost, and you resist Dark, but you are weak to ground, you take normal damage from fighting, and it can be hard to play. Heliolisk is our first example here of something that's, it's a dry skin mon, it's also 109 speed, so it has solid niches, but Hyper Voice just isn't as good as Boom Burst, and even though it gets a Volt Switch, usually that's not going to do a ton of damage. Like, even Swellow, if you want to actually turn out of a bad matchup, U-turn Swellow, if you're not going to break it with Boom Burst, is just as acceptable as Volt Switch Heliolisk. And this gets coverage through Grass Knot and Surf. Really cool coverage, but Honestly, just a kind of weak mon, not the best defensive stats and not even super great offensive stats to boost it up. I think it's B-. I could see arguments for it being next to Galvantula. It makes sense, right? But I am comfortable with B- personally. Malamar abuses opposing Webs teams, getting a speed boost. It can also really do well with its own Choice Scarf or Careful Set, super powering up, so you can deal damage while setting it up through Contrary. Don't have much to say about Malamar. I will say one of the big weaknesses is Psychic Dark being 4 times weak to Bug, so you're prone to being U-turned on. That is a pretty big deal. And also not the best Psychic moves in general. I don't even think it gets Zen Headbutt, so you have to use Psycho Cut as your Psychic Stab, so a little rough. You get Knockoff, you get Superpower, but other than that, Rest Talk, I guess. Malamar B-. Braviary, the American Bird. This one is definitely good. 80 base speed isn't amazing, but it's good. Defiance is great defog preventer, but there's not a whole lot of defog in the tier. You can Scarf this and really hit hard. Honestly, I could see Braviary climbing up to B in the future, just if people start spamming more Mandibuzz and Crobat with defog and whatnot. I mean, it'll probably happen, but the problem is, like, even if you kill Mandibuzz with Brave Bird, you're going to take the Brave Bird recoil off base 105 HP from the Mandibuzz. So you're taking probably half your health and damage plus Rocky Helmet just for killing it. So are there more efficient ways to kill Mandibuzz when it clicks defog? Yeah, for sure. But it can be good. Can definitely be good. There's even sub bulk up sets where you can run enough HP to live a Seismic Toss from Blissey, which can be a really big deal. So we'll see if Braviary gets more love, but for now, B- is where it is. Granbull is a favorite of mine. It is one of the few switch-ins to the fighting types, like Guts Heracross. Crobat doesn't normally run a poison move, so you can come in on this. You get Thunder Wave utility, Heal Bell utility, and great coverage for the tier through Play Rough, Earthquake for Empoleon, and Fire Punch for Fortress, but overall, really weak on the Spadef side. So even though you're running this, it's like, if you need a physical wall and a special wall, you usually want Sylveon, unless you need a really fringe check to stuff like Krookodile and Mienshao. Like if you're just scared of being too hit KO'd by like Crook Earthquake, then Granbull is probably the better option. But yeah, there's a reason Sylveon's A and this thing is B-. Florges is another fairy type, kind of the polar opposite, weak on the physical side, strong on the special side. Florges also gets defog, which is great utility, but it is bullied often. You can take advantage of its weak physical side and break through it. Honestly, I could see Florges being B tier as well, but I just haven't heard enough about it. And I think it's really predictable in how it's just going to be usually Wish, Protect, either Defog or Toxic, and then Moonblast. It doesn't usually have a whole lot going for it. I think overall Sylveon is the better Cleric. Also gets Aromatherapy, I suppose, but really hard to justly say it makes sense on the team. I have Milotic next, Milotic, however you want to say it, and this mon is great. Flame Orb Marvel Scale sets will not be taking much damage at all from physical attackers. It has Recover as well, so it can heal off very easily. Spread status through Scald and Toxic. Be very annoying, but I think Aloe is a bit better as a bulky water for Regenerator. You don't have to be forced to stay in and use Recover, and you also have very similar physical bulk when fully invested. Even a Milotic with Marvel Scale, it's going to be taking stuff like Flame Orb Chip and being forced to recover, where all Aloe has to do is Wish, Protect, Switch very easily. But yeah, I don't think Milotic is super restrictive on the meta in the same way Aloe is, but you should still prep for it. I have Sneasel in B-, so it's Baby Weavile, and that's really all you need to know. 115 speed, Knock off, Icicle Crash, Ice Shard, Pursuit. You can use a Sash set even to surprise and catch people off guard. I think it can be really good. It has a great speed tier of 115 admittedly, but not seeing a whole lot with it recently. I want to see Sneasel do something, but I'm gonna put it B-. I think it has potential. Ursaring has a pretty good gut set. Guts Facade has no switch-ins, especially if you let it get up a Swords Dance. Added utility and Trick Room, but that's really all there is about Ursaring. Big Mama Bear, Father Bear. Piloswine is actually a pretty good lead, in my opinion. Very bulky. You don't need to run a Sash with its Eviolite bulk. Thick Fat can be a good ability to take on the Ice types or Ice coverage moves, as well as Fire coverage moves. Piloswine can live a freaking Emboar Flare Blitz. And if you don't believe me, I'll show you. Look at this. Piloswine, Adamant Thick Fat Eviolite, Banded Emboar Flare Blitz, Reckless Boosted Adamant, 74 to 86. So that's all you need to know about this thing's bulk. Of course, yeah, it drops to superpower, sure. But it can live a lot of hits. Gets Endeavor, it gets Ice Shard, it gets Earthquake, Stealth Rocks. Yeah, a lot of utility, and the Ice Shard can be really annoying. Coming off a decent attack too, 100. So not bad. Okay, next I have Druddigon, kind of baby Garchomp in the tier. You can use a Rocky Helmet with it, and also the Rough Skin ability to really deter U-turn users from doing that much. It gets Glare, which is something huge that it gets. Stealth Rock, Dragon Tail for phasing. Earthquake if you want just the decent coverage move. But yeah, not much to say about Druddigon, other than I think it can be a pretty good lead, or even a pivot to deter against U-turn. Archeops has a Taunt Sash Endeavor set, which is pretty cool. You can also Scarf it. It has a good speed tier at 110. Again, if it's faster than Mienshao, faster than Crook, why not Scarf it sometimes? And there you go. Before it's in Defeatist range, it can hit pretty hard too. So its applications as a lead, as well as some of the stuff from generally hitting hard, is all pretty cool on it. And before F tier, we're going to put Mantine in. And Mantine, I think, is in a really bad spot, honestly, being weak to rocks and being way too passive compared to stuff like Mandibuzz. Yeah, I mean, honestly, compared to Mandibuzz, it's like, it's very rare that you actually want to use Mantine. Water Absorb isn't that prominent. It's funny, like, you definitely want it on Toxicroak, but it doesn't matter as much on the water types, in my opinion, because this one will just get toxic, and so will Seismitoad, but Toxicroak avoids both. Yeah, just not in the best spot. Scald and Toxic, but it doesn't do much that another bulky water will do. Really has to Roost to heal it off. Doesn't get regen. Just not the best spot. Okay, we're not going to go over F tiers, but I am going to put them in. And I think this is the funniest thing. I'm going to put Xatu first. Then I'm going to put Flagon in. And this isn't staying F tier. This is going to be called Flagon tier, because I don't want to hear it. Flagon is not that great in this tier. I know there are Flagon fans. I also think it's a cool design. I'm a DPP player, and we had Flagon in DPP as one of the best Scarfers in the entire tier. But nah, this shit is not it in the new T1. Not even close. You need Banded to do any kind of damage. Scarf is going to do absolutely nothing. Banded Outrage barely OKO'd this Heracross I was playing against once. That is a banded 120 base power attack Outrage versus not even a resist. That's a Heracross. Yeah. It's so bad. It's so bad. Scarf Earthquake is not going to even 2-hit KO Nidoqueen. Like, Bold Nidoqueen is going to live that shit. Yeah, okay, so I'm basically putting Pokemon in this F tier here, but I'm ranting about Flagon. That mon is disastrous. The only sets I would use are 100%. I would use Banded or Defensive. Don't use Scarf. Maybe Dragon Dance, too. So yeah, you can look generally at F tier. I put them in order of how good I feel they are. this is kind of the end-all list for me and where the viability is with these mons at the end. They're not F tier, it's really just a pun on Flygon, and that's all. They're not that unviable. Like, honestly, there's a lot of Pokemon that didn't make it on this list that are still viable, so highly encourage you to check that out and try to prove me wrong. Leave a comment. Did I forget anything? Are there any Pokemon that I didn't go over on this list that you think deserve some love? Let me know in the comments. I know this video was long. I got a drink ready for a reason, and I talked a lot, so I hope you made it to the end of the video. Gonna put Celebi back on. Literally, this mon is so beautiful. I'm so glad it's getting the love it deserves in T1. This was I'm one for orange, aka I'm one for Rige, aka I'm one for tier lists. I'm going crazy at the end of this video, but I will put all my resources I went over here, the T1 ban list, I'll put the usage stats, and I'll put my tier list that I made here in the description. But I know this was a long video. How long was it anyway? I need to check. 1 hour and 30 minutes. God. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. If you made it to the end of this video and you didn't leave a like or comment what you think or subscribe to the channel, I don't know what you're doing. But be sure to subscribe so you're notified when I upload in the future next. If you have any thoughts about this tier list, let me know. I'm a broken record at this point. I'm going crazy. Hope you guys all have a great Labor Day, assuming that I get it up today. If not, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.